Okay, so this is going to look at three things. We're going to briefly look at referencing and reporting investigations, and then we're going to look at the 12-mark questions, which is something that's unique to the research methods section of the papers. So referencing. I've mentioned this before. Reference section is a section of a report. Referencing is where you write sources that you used to do research. You need to be aware of how a reference is written and the format in which it is written in. So psychology uses Harvard referencing, and you need to be aware of this format because you could get an exam question. One has come up before where you are given the name of a book and the author and where the book was published, and you're asked to write that book as a reference. There are references in the back of your psychology textbook if you want to have a look at kind of lots of references, but they're always in this format. So it's author, so it's surname, initial, date, title of book, edition of book, place of publication, name of publisher. So the reference at the top of the screen here is the reference of a book. So it's surname, initial, date, title of book, edition of book, place of publication, and publisher. The second reference on that page is referencing a journal article. So again, you've got surname, initial, date. Now there's three researchers here, so you just list the researchers, the surname, initial, surname, initial, surname, initial, date, title of journal article, name of journal, edition number of journal, and page number of journal. So it's the same format as the book, but you've got surname, initial, date, title of article, name of journal, edition of journal, page number. When you are writing a references list, references should be in alphabetical order, but they follow the same format. This is a psychology textbook that we don't use. If you were referencing this, you use the same format. So it's surname, initial, date. So you'd go Lawton, comma, JM, Willard, comma, E. Then in brackets, you would put the date, so 2015. You would then put the name of the book, so AQA Psychology for A-Level Book 1. You would then put the place of publication. Now, this isn't on there, so say it's London. If Hodder published in London, it would be London, and then the publisher is Hodder. So that's how you would reference that book. This is a journal article, so you would reference this in the same way. So surname, initial, date first. So there's four names there. So you go like Lever, L, Hopewell, L, and so on. The date, if you look at the top, is 2007. The title of the paper is The Audience Effects on Food Caching. Then you would have the name of the journal, which is Animal Cognition, which is at the top. The journal number, which is 10, and the page number, which is 23 to 27. So that's the format in which you have to write down references. Be aware of this, it's come up before as an exam question. Just learn the format. Now, reporting investigations, it's been on the maths and statistics presentation, but just to recap, you've got these different sections of a report. So the abstract, the introduction, the method, results, discussion, referencing, and appendices. Make sure you know what's in each section because you could get asked a question. What would you find in the abstract? What would you find in the introduction? There's been a question before on which section of a report would you find the aims and hypotheses of a study. So just make sure that you know what is in each section. Now, in psychology, you've got your essay questions, which are your 16-mark questions, or your 8-mark questions. But in research methods, you can get a 12-mark question. This question follows a different format than the other questions, and this question involves some practice in order for you to be able to get the marks for the questions. If you stick to the question, it's fairly straightforward to pick up all 12 marks. A 12-mark question is usually the end of a research methods section of a paper, and it's usually based on some previous research that's been on the pages before. But what it will happen is you'll be given a scenario like this here, and then you'll be given some bullet points. So there'll be a scenario, and then there'll be 3 or 4 bullet points. What you have to do is work through each bullet point and just write exactly what the bullet point is asking you for. So, for example, this is designing an experiment to investigate the effect of plants on the mood in office workers. The measure of mood should be data that would be ordinal. So ordinal data would be a questionnaire. So first bullet point. Now there's 12 marks, there's 3 bullet points. So you're thinking you're getting 4 marks for each bullet point. The first bullet point asks you for 4 things. So it says design, include reference to the experimental design, variables and controls. So that's 4 things. Experimental design is 1, your variables are 2, and controls is kind of the 4th mark. So you just work through that bullet point by answering the question. So you need to say whether you're using an independent measures or repeated measures design, or a match pairs design. So just pick a design. It doesn't matter which one it is. It would the design you pick affects what stats test you would use for the 3rd bullet point, but it doesn't matter. So just pick whether you use independent measures or repeated measures. So if it's the same people in the same office, but certain days they've got plants and certain days they haven't, it's repeated measures. If you've got 2 offices, one's got plants and one hasn't, it's independent measures. Your variables, your IV and your DV. So your IV is the presence of an indoor plant, and your DV is the mood of the office workers. That's 2 marks there. That's information just from the STEM that you get 2 marks for by writing in your answer. And your controls is everything that's kept the same. So the size of the office, the time of day, the temperature, and so on. So there's 4 marks there from that first bullet point. The second bullet point asks for materials, so any special materials that would be required. Now, again, there's going to be 4 marks here. The question, the STEM is asking you for ordinal data. So you want a questionnaire. You want to design a questionnaire that measures mood. So that's what you want to talk about there. So any special materials, you want a questionnaire that measures mood. That would be 2 marks. You get a further 2 marks for giving an example of how you might measure mood in the questionnaire. So maybe you could give a Likert scale question where you ask people to measure their mood on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is ecstatically happy and 5 is completely miserable. It doesn't really matter as long as it's an example of a question. The third bullet point is about data analysis. Again, there's 4 marks. So you've got descriptive analysis, so descriptive statistics, and you've got inferential analysis or inferential statistics. So descriptive statistics is measures of central tendency, so averages, measures of dispersion, so spreads, and graphs. So if you did this experiment, you would probably, if you did some questionnaires, you'd probably have some median scores. So that would be a descriptive statistic. You would probably have a range of scores. So that would be another descriptive statistic. And you'd probably be able to create a bar chart based on those scores. Inferential statistics, you would need to choose a stats test which tests at an ordinal level. So your ordinal tests that you would be looking for. So you've got Mann-Whitney, Wilcoxon, or Spearman's. You're looking for a test of difference. So it'd be Mann-Whitney or Wilcoxon, and then that just depends on what your design is. So if you've got an independent measures design, it will be a Mann-Whitney test, and if you've got a repeated measures design, it will be a Wilcoxon test. I'm writing that down. That's your 4 marks for the third bullet point. So that's how those questions work. So they all work in the same format. Same thing again here. Design an observational study to investigate how people spend their time at the gym. 4 bullet points, so you're thinking 3 marks for each. So the type of observation with justification, so overt, covert, participant or non-participant, and why. Operationalized behavioral categories, so things that you will be looking for at the gym. It needs to be operationalized, so put in a form that can be measured. So the amount of reps done on a rowing machine, the amount of minutes spent talking. So something like that is an operationalized category. You could draw out a little tally chart to show that's how you would measure the categories if you want to. The use of time or event sampling and why. So do you event sample? Do you record every behavior when it occurs? Or do you time sample? Do you record every behavior within a minute time period? Say why. It depends how long you're observing for. It depends how big the area is that you're observing. And then how you could assess reliability of data collection. If you're doing an observation and it asks you about reliability of data collection, it's talking about inter-rater reliability or inter-observer reliability. So you kind of want to go for the standard answer of you have more than one observer, they have the same behavioral categories, they've been trained in the same way, they observe the behavior for the same amount of time, they record their answers separately, they then come together and compare their results, and they look for an agreement of 80%, or they look for a correlation coefficient of plus 0.8. So they agree 80% of the time, and that's how they assess the reliability. So that's how you would get the 12 marks there. So these 12-mark questions, they could be about anything, but they follow the same format. But the secret of them is to not deviate from the bullet points. Don't have too much independent thought. Don't go rogue. If you're not writing down something that's on the bullet point, you are not getting the marks. Design a study to investigate gender differences in card sorting behaviour. This one's 9 marks, so there would normally be a 12 mark, but in this case you've got 3 marks for each bullet point. So how would you ensure that the task is the same for all participants? So the same deck of cards in the same order, given for the same amount of time. So you reshuffle the deck in the same order for each person. One methodological issue when obtaining participants. Now, methodological issue is to do with the task that they are doing. These people are sorting cards. Your methodological issue is something along the lines of their experience sorting cards or their ability to sort cards. So their how familiar they are with cards. So if they're a croupier or a magician and they sort a lot of cards, you would have to deal with that by maybe removing them from the sample, or maybe using match pairs. If they have giant hands or tiny hands, they might be bad at sorting cards. That's a methodological thing. So it's all about card sorting and their experience of card sorting, and then ethics. So just think of an ethical issue that's appropriate for this task. So maybe protection of participants and embarrassment, and then name it and ensure, and just state how you would ensure it is ethical. Again, exactly the same thing. Observational study, sex differences in non-verbal behaviour. The task, so what people are doing, how long they're doing it for, who they're doing it to. So they're giving a 2-minute presentation on their favourite types of toothpaste to an audience of 500 students. Behavioural categories, so what the observers will be looking for. So a non-verbal behaviour that you can observe when someone's giving a presentation. Reliability, again, it's an observation, so you want to be talking about inter-rater reliability, and ethics, an ethical issue that links to an observation. And then this is the one from before. So just to show you the mark scheme. So this is how it's marked on the kind of 4-leveled band again. But if you think in a 3 bullet point that each bullet point is worth 4 marks, and you just do the things that it asks for, you will get the 4 marks and you will be able to get level 4. And that's just the mark scheme for that question.